Welcome to Frasier on Film, the Frasier TV show podcast with a twist. Each episode of the podcast visits each episode of Frasier across its 11-series run. But our main focus isn't on the good doctor himself, no. It's going to be one of the guest appearances on the show that week. That could be one of the many A-listers who called into Frasier's KACL radio show, or just someone who made a fleeting appearance at Cafe Nervosa. We'll delve into that actor's backstory, look over their cinematic offerings, and deep dive into one movie specifically. By the end, we'll see if we can make a connection between their character in Frasier and their character in the film we've just talked about. So you'll be hearing about icons and wash-ups, legends and starlets, sherry drinkers and beer guzzlers, blockbusters and B-movies. It's going to be an education in it all. But what if you don't really watch Frasier? That's fine, you'll probably know the actors we're talking about. And if you don't really know the actors we're talking about, then that's fine too. You'll know the movies. So whether you're a fan of Frasier or you're a fan of film, this is the podcast for you. So, pull up your favourite bar stool at McGinty's and tell the wine club you'll be running late, because this is Frasier on Film, and I'm your host, Ben Murray, and you're listening. What if Frasier met more than his own parents? What if he met the Fockers? Merry Christmas, one and all. Here we are, early to mid 2025, celebrating that most festive of holidays. Yes, it's our very first Christmas episode of Frasier on Film and of Frasier itself. Listen, I haven't gone insane. I'm actually recording this at the back end of 2024. So I'm genuinely currently looking at a Christmas tree to my right. There's a bundle of decorations over my shoulder. And as I look out the window, there's a wintry skyline just outside. I really hope you all had a great one many months ago. But at the time I'm recording this, Christmas is yet to come. This is like a Christmas Carol-esque episode of Frasier and Film. The ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future will be visiting, perhaps. Forget that. Let's come crashing back down to the present. Season 1, Episode 12. And today's episode is called Miracle on 3rd or 4th Street. Of course, a play on Miracle on 34th Street. I just watched that the other day, actually, with my wife. Our guest actor for today is Ben Stiller, arguably one of the biggest names we've had on Frasier on Film. Certainly up there with Linda Hamilton and Christopher Reeve. It's a big boy. We've caught a big one. Of course, he's known for a cavalcade of comedic ventures, from Zoolander to Meet the Parents and a whole bunch in between. But we are going to try and tackle something a little bit different from him. It's a dramatic film, I believe. It's a film called Permanent Midnight from 1998. Something of a black comedy, I've been led to believe, with him starring as a man struggling to overcome his heroin addiction. Heavy stuff, folks. I assume there'll be no Tropic Thunder blackface style jokes or Blue Steel gags in this one. We'll find out, I suppose. But let's not get hasty. I ask you all now, dear listeners, to close your eyes, go to your kitchen or wherever your refrigerator is and stand by it. Yeah, in fact, walk to it with your eyes open first, then get to it, then close your eyes. Open the door, feel the chill, and allow yourself to drift back a few months to December. And get ready for a Crane Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Seattle! Yes, this is Dr. Frasier Crane coming to you on Christmas Day. Christmas, that very magical time of the year when each moment is as unique as a snowflake, never to be recreated.
I'm sorry, Frasier. The news went over. You're going to have to do that again.
Merry Christmas, Seattle!
Season 1, Episode 12. Episode title, Miracle on 3rd or 4th Street. Air date 16th of December 1993. Writer Christopher Lloyd. Director James Burrows, Jimmy Burrows. As I said, it's a Christmas opener and we open up at KACL. There is a big Christmas party at the station and we see a lot of familiar faces. Bulldog, we see Chopper Dave, and we even meet Bonnie Weems. Bonnie Weems is an infamous character at KACL and we'll never see her again in the entirety of Frasier's run, but we'll see her poster in the hallways. There's a bit of a joke about the fact that Frasier's the new guy at the station, which means he has become part of a tradition, which is he will have to drive Bonnie Weems home after the Christmas party because she normally has too much to drink. And everyone finds it very, very funny that Frasier is the one who will be driving her home, with the implication seeming to be that she's going to make a move on him on the drive back. And I mean, she's certainly equal match to him, because when she's ready to go home from that party, she just boosts Kelsey Grammer up over her shoulder. That woman is strong. She boosts him up. Grammer's not a small man. He's a butch man. But meanwhile, at the party, Bulldog hits Frasier up to see if he'll cover his slot on Christmas Day because he wants to spend it with his sister and her new kid. Frasier's saying, no, I'm spending time with family. Frasier and Roz also swap gifts at the party. Frasier mistakenly, or maybe not mistakenly, maybe just this is how he thought it should go. He bought a gag gift. He bought her a trick microphone. But Roz buys him this really beautiful briefcase, and there's this very awkward and funny moment because Frasier opens the gift first and he sees that she's bought him this fantastic leather briefcase, seemingly leather briefcase. And then his face is a treat as she opens up the trick microphone. I believe that the suitcase that Roz has bought him is the suitcase that he then uses for the entirety of the Frasier run. So there's something quite nice in that. I quite like that little beautiful moment. We cut to Frasier's apartment and we got a lot of Niles heavy comedy here. We open up, Niles is sipping eggnog, he puts the glass down and Eddie is standing by, ready to drink up that leftover eggnog. Niles doesn't see it and he drinks from the same glass. It's all in one take. I love that the actor was happy enough to drink from the same glass that Moose supped from. Shows how intimate the cast are. As Frasier comes in, he catches Niles in a slightly awkward moment because Niles has been getting Daphne to try on little red dresses and little black dresses just to see if they all fit because, you know, her and Maris are the same size. Frasier adds, give or take a foot. And then we get the immortal line, Niles, some sherry. He says that. He says that to Niles. And I think this is the first time that we hear that sherry Niles or variation of in Frasier. So the Christmas episode, it brought us that little joy. Bulldog's still hassling Frasier at his apartment, calling up, asking if he'll cover his shift. And Martin is hanging up his plastic wreath on the front door, much to Frasier's objection. Martin and Frasier will butt heads in many, many Christmas episodes about how the decor should look at Christmas time. This is very tame compared to what Martin wants later. Another Niles gag, he drops the glass on the table when Daphne says she nearly had to slip out of her knickers to get into the last dress. He shatters that table and it causes Moose, Eddie, to jump in Martin's chair, legitimately jump. I always feel bad for him when I watch this episode. That little dog wasn't expecting that glass to shatter. He leaps. Someone else calls the apartment. It's Lilith. Lilith is on the phone. I think this is Lilith's first appearance in Frasier, even if it is at the end of a telephone. And Frasier goes to the bedroom to take the call. Meanwhile, the gang discuss the fact that everyone is going to the cabin the next day to celebrate Christmas. Frederick is flying in, so Frasier will get a chance to spend Christmas with his son and with Martin and with Maris, Niles. But Daphne actually can't come. She can't come. She's off to visit her transvestite uncle, Jackie, in San Francisco. And Frasier returns from the bedroom, having gotten off the phone, to the sad news that Freddie is going to Austria for Christmas.
Oh, apparently he has this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for an incredible Christmas. A friend of hers has rented a home in Austria.
What's the matter with the good old USA?
Well, apparently it's the same house that they filmed The Sound of Music in, and that happens to be Freddie's favorite movie.
Well, we can rent it. He can watch
Julie
it right
Andrews
here.
is singing with the Salzburg Chorale. They're having dinner with her afterwards. And there's something nonsense about a horse-driven sleigh ride through the snow and a toboggan and a balloon trip through the Alps. And yes, and apparently on their way back, they're going to spend an entire day at Euro Disneyland.
Well, up at the cabin, there's an old stump that the local children seem to enjoy kicking.
Frasier and Martin start to irritate one another here because Martin says, you know you need to let him go, right? And Frasier says, oh, well, of course I know. Whatever would I do without you telling me what to do? And you can see there's a tension there. But very quickly, Daphne looks to put it out. She's there. She's the calming influence. She says, let's decorate the tree. And Martin starts to decorate the tree, and Frasier's like, oh, no, Dad, I don't want to use those lights this year. I want to use these lights. And Frasier pulls out the most ridiculous fucking lights you've ever seen. Chili peppers, red chili peppers, which leads to a big fight.
I hope you two aren't going to be behaving this way up at the cabin.
Oh, we won't, because I'm not going to the cabin.
What do you mean you're not going to cabin? Where the hell are you going?
I'm staying right here.
Well, you can't stay alone on
I
Christmas.
decided to fill in for Bulldog. Somebody will have a Merry Christmas.
Well, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas!
The gag is actually Eddie Moose. Eddie's great in this episode. He's popping his head out from behind the pillow because he doesn't like the shouting. It's very cute. And Niles and Daphne look down. It's a team affair. This is a great scene where it shows all the actors working magically with one another and the dog as well. It's fantastic. Back at KACL, Frasier has decided he is going to cover Bulldog's shift because he says, let him have a Merry Christmas. Everyone go to the cabin. If I can't see my son, I will do the show. But he turns up looking worse for wears. He's got holes in his hoodie top. It's like, why you got holes in it, man? Like, Frasier, you don't strike me as the kind of guy who would have holes all up in his hoodie top. Roz is mad that she's got to be there. But they power through, and power through they do, because they have a series of what I guess you might call anti-Christmas call-ins. A bunch of calls to the show that are either depressing or upsetting for Roz and Frasier. We've got a guy who says he was filled with the Christmas spirit because when he drove off from the gym, he looked in his rearview mirror and realised he'd left his trainers behind, and then he saw a homeless man going for them, and he thought, what the hell, and kept on driving. Someone who keeps falling over in the shower and they don't know how many more pins they can fit into her hip. Someone who loves the sound of music. A man whose puppy died on Christmas Day when he was gifted it. And Ben Stiller, who calls in as Barry, who can't stop crying. This actually leads to Roz crying and Frasier finishing the show alone without her on Christmas Day. And then we conclude with one of my favourite scenes from all the Christmas movies, the diner scene. Frasier arrives at a diner trying to get a cheap meal for the day, and he is mistaken for a member of the homeless community, a member of Seattle's homeless community. But here's where the beauty really comes in, because he interacts. His pompousness is reduced down to nothing, because he's making out like he's above the turkey platter and the logs of food which come out. When he served it, he says the chef didn't exactly dally over the remoulade, did he? But his pompousness is pricked because this homeless man next to him is the man who received the trainers from that call-in guy. He mistakes him for someone who hasn't seen his father in a long time and is living rough. And when Frasier legitimately forgets his wallet and realises he can't pay for the meal, this guy rallies round everyone else in the diner. They raise some money and pay for his meal. And Frasier's touched. And the guy gives Frasier a departing speech, which is, every other day is for the rich guys who have their fancy clothes and fancy cars, but Christmas belongs to guys like us. And then Frasier has to sneak out on his hands and knees to crawl into his Mercedes, which is parked right outside. And actually, it's a very funny scene because then he has to crawl back in to get his keys. And then the homeless guy tosses him a coin and says, go and call your old man. And Frasier says, I think I will. And it ends with Frasier walking away from his car, clearly going to call Martin on Christmas Day, which is a very beautiful thing. But the whole set piece is very beautiful because the snow is constantly falling through the window out back. We've got all these Christmas decorations in the diner. We've got all these people dressed warmly. They're ready for winter. It's very beautiful. I like it. It's quite an emotional episode, and its heart is in the right place. And it's absolutely the kind of Christmas episode you would watch in and around the Christmas period to get into the Christmas spirit. A lot of other episodes sometimes have Christmas iconography, but don't feel too festive, whereas this one does. This one feels very warm. I'm a huge fan of this episode. I'll hit you up with a few bits of trivia here. I know that we're focusing on Ben Stiller in this episode, but some of the other celebrity callers are Mel Brooks. We did his man Friday, the other day. Mel Brooks was one of the callers here. Eric Stoltz was one of the callers. Eric Stoltz is going to appear in Frasier in a few episodes, and I think we're even going to do an episode on him. Dominic Dunn calls up and Rosemary Clooney calls up. And as I mentioned, the title is a play on Miracle on 34th Street, and Jane Leeves was in the remake of that film in 1994. Anyway, we've been festive long enough. Let's leave Christmas. Let's bring you back to present day. I am now the ghost of Christmas present. Come in and know me better, man. Or know Ben Stiller better. Let's hear what Barry had to say when he called up.
I'm sorry. That was the last time. I'm okay now. I'm really okay.
Barry, listen, I've got to put you on hold for a bit while you pull yourself together, but please stay on the line. I'd really like to help you.
It's all right. I think I got a hold of myself.
Ben Stiller then. We all know him. We all know him, so this feels like a rather redundant section, but it isn't. I've got some gems for you, so stick around. You may think you know him, but you don't. Ben Stiller, guess where he was born? That's right, where everyone was. New York City, born on November 30th, 1965. New York, the Upper West Side. So his father, I think some of you are going to recognise him. That's my cat running around. Some of you are going to recognise him. Is actor and comedian Jerry Stiller. Now, I know him very, very well for being George Costanza's dad in Seinfeld. But he was also in King of Queens and various other things. And Ben Stiller's mum, actress and comedian Anne Meara. And Jerry Stiller was from a Jewish family that immigrated from Poland and Galicia. I've been there, north of Spain. And Anne Meara was raised Irish Catholic. But she did convert to Judaism after marrying Jerry Stiller. And although they were never really a religious family, they celebrated both Hanukkah and Christmas, and Stiller even had a bar mitzvah. So, naturally, for Ben Stiller, growing up in that sort of show business household meant that he was frequently on the sets of his parents' various television appearances, stage appearances, etc. He says his show business upbringing consisted of a lot of late nights and travelling, anything but traditional, obviously. He had a sister, and it was with her and his friends that he began letting his own creative sparks start to fire. How did he do this? He actually took an interest in filmmaking and began making Super 8 movies with them at the age of 9. So he was directing at the age of 9, and he then began performing with the New York Children's Theatre Troupe and took inspiration from the television show Second City Television, which inspired him to jump into sketch comedy. At high school, he formed a punk band, becoming the drummer of a group called Capital Punishment. And this is not ancient history because the band released an EP as recently as 2018 to celebrate Record Store Day. So everyone go out there and try and find it. Give it a listen. After graduating in 1983, Stiller began performing as the opening act on cabaret circuits before enrolling as a film student at the University of California. But 9 months of that was more than enough for our Ben, and he ended up returning to New York to make his way as an actor. And as luck would have it, and this is very bizarre, there's nothing as strange as real life, one of his first breakthrough roles came at the age of 21 when he appeared on Broadway in a production of The House of Blue Leaves, starring opposite none other than Martin Crane himself. John Mahoney, stop the presses. We've got a Crane connection already. How cool is that? So embedded was he with John Mahoney that he actually directed a mockumentary following John Mahoney around as well. And then he followed that up by making a short film called The Hustler of Money, where he again starred opposite John Mahoney. And it was a kind of spoof of The Hustle with Paul Newman, but instead he was a bowling hustler.
I never cared about money, kid. You got a real talent. You're good, but you're a flake.
I'm a flake.
It's good.
Ooh, that's good. I'm a flake.
That's good.
That's good.
That's good.
That's good.
Can you turn it on, turn it off?
Turn it on, turn it off.
Can you turn it on, turn it off?
Turn it on, turn it off.
Stop saying what I'm saying.
Stop saying what you're saying.
And the short did so well that it got the attention of Saturday Night Live, and they offered Ben Stiller a spot on the show as a writer. So Stiller wrote and appeared on SNL several times, and he continued his efforts as a short filmmaker along the side, putting together films that would include his friends John Cusack, Jeremy Piven, Mike Myers, Andy Dick, a whole bunch of them. And he was really starting to get noticed. And in 1990, producers at MTV offered him a 13-episode experimental show titled The Ben Stiller Show. Have any of you seen that? I've never seen it, but the premise was a mixed comedy sketch show with music videos scattered in between. And Stiller starred in it, of course, and it's always a family affair with Ben. His parents were in it and his sister was in it. And even though it was cancelled after its first season, another show titled The Ben Stiller Show was picked up by Fox. And the ratings continued to be low, but it broadened the pool of talent that Stiller had available to him as he began working alongside the likes of Judd Apatow and Bob Odenkirk. So then, at the dawn of the 90s, Mr. Stiller's acting star began to slowly rise in movies. Naturally, the early roles consisted of bit parts and cameo appearances, but his big break came in 1994 with Reality Bites, a film which he both directed and co-starred in alongside Winona Ryder and Ethan Hawke. The film was produced by Danny DeVito as well, and though many people like it, I found it insufferable. Pretentious is not a big enough word for this romantic comedy about jaded 90s youth. Good Lord, it wasn't for me, but it was for Ben, and it worked for Ben. Not this Ben, Ben Stiller, I mean, because he was well and truly on the map now. And he continued starring alongside his parents in films. He was in Heavyweights, where he plays like a fat camp coach, an extreme fat camp coach. It was kind of good. And he appeared in early Adam Sandler comedies like Happy Gilmore. But to compound his fame and ensure the world would know his name, he would have to return behind the camera once again. So, in 1996, he directed and starred alongside Jim Carrey in The Cable Guy. And though it was released to mixed reviews, the star power, of course, of Carrey's name ensured that Stiller's name would be mentioned in the same conversations. I remember watching The Cable Guy a long, long time ago, and I wasn't really sure what to make of it. I was a kid. I felt like I was a kid at the time. Very peculiar comedy. I'm sure many of you have seen it. Anyway, that same year, Stiller produced a skit for the VH1 Fashion Awards. And for it, he created a persona about a male model, you can see where this is going, right, named Derek Zoolander. And if you don't know that name by now, where have you been living? Just a few years later, he would direct and star in the feature film of his life, arguably, Zoolander, and create some of the most unforgettable lines and moments in frat pack comedy history. It's not my favourite of his, though. So into the late 90s, Stiller began to focus on the comedic work in front of the camera. The late 90s to early noughties were kind to Stiller. We all know him from that period, really. To list his comedic achievements here would take much more time than I have. But the highlights, here they are. You know them. There's Something About Mary in 98, Mystery Men in 99, Meet the Parents in 2000. The majority of his work at the time was making serious bank, with Meet the Parents particularly, and, you know, the subsequent sequels. They were all largely box office hits, even if they were critical flops, alongside Zoolander, of course. And he would frequently team up with the likes of Owen Wilson on screen, and a parade of lackluster comedies were mixed in with some quite successful ones. He also began appearing on television too. He was on Friends, Arrested Development, Curb Your Enthusiasm, King of Queens, a whole bunch more. And the mid to late noughties really showed that Stiller was equally comfortable making family entertainment like Night at the Museum, alongside some of his more, shall we say, cutting-edge humour, such as Tropic Thunder, which he also directed. Stiller was obviously prolific across much of the comedic landscape at the turn of the 21st century. It's earned him the mythical title of leader of the frat pack. Stiller denies the existence of the frat pack, but for those who don't know, the frat pack is this informal collection of actors: Jack Black, Will Ferrell, Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson, Steve Carell, and Paul Rudd. And Stiller is kind of credited as the leader due to his collaborations with all of them. But Stiller says this is a mere fabrication. There is no such thing. Doesn't matter what you say, Stiller. We know you're part of this secret society. Don't lie to us. In 2000, he married Christine Taylor, who was his co-star in Zoolander, Dodgeball, and Tropic Thunder, and the pair remained together to this day, though they did have a brief trial separation just before the coronavirus pandemic hit. And as the 21st century rumbled on and rumbles on, Stiller's success as a comedic actor waned and is waning, and his efforts have started shifting back to behind the camera as a director, producer, and showrunner. And perhaps the most successful of these recently is his director and executive producer credits on the TV series Severance, which won 2 Emmy Awards for its first season alone. At the time of recording this, I've seen season 1. I very much enjoyed it. It's a bit of a mindfuck. Let's see what season 2 brings.
To me, it just jumped off the page. You know, it's kind of rooted in these workplace comedies like The Office or Office Space, or this comedy genre, I think, that's developed over the last 20 years or so, whatever, that we have, and this banter that, Parks and Rec, that kind of vibe. But yet it's happening in a world where these people go to work, they have a chip implanted in their head. When they go to work, they don't know who they are on the outside. They don't remember anything about their life. When they leave work, they don't remember what happened at work. So they're like talking and kind of having this kind of workplace interaction, but then they don't know what they're doing, why they're there, or who they are. And that was interesting to me.
And just to wrap up here, Stiller is a Democrat and a proud advocate for global health charities such as Project ALS and the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. In 2018, he was appointed Goodwill Ambassador for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and he has gone on record as saying that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is his hero. Well, this feels to me like a good moment to stop and throw in my 2 cents on Stiller, because he has definitely shifted from this comedic clown-like entity in my mind to this serious, more stern figure. I mean, I followed him on social media off and on over the last few years, and it's clear he's walking the line between shining lights on political and social issues that are close to his heart, promoting his showrunner work on Severance, and then also posting things like montage clips of snot running down his face as he takes on the Hot Ones Hot Wing Challenge. So a muddle of everything about this guy. To be honest, what's super interesting to me is this information regarding his desire to be behind the camera, even from that early age. Almost like the comedy performance and persona that we see on screen are a bit of a bonus, but where he really feels at home and belongs is behind the camera for comedic or dramatic purposes. I also wonder where this more dramatic side of his personality springs from. We all have a more serious side, yes, but growing up in a household of comedic entertainers and then inhabiting that persona on screen for so long, it's interesting to me that he has this separate channel of sorts to unleash a more serious, thoughtful attitude. He could be consumed by the comedic pigeonhole entirely. It could consume him, but clearly he has a little more to offer, or at least thinks he does. It's something that success has allowed him in later years, I suppose, to take more chances and risks for the personal projects. But what about earlier on? What's odd is when I was listing his shift to comedic work in all those big comedies from the late 90s, Something About Mary, Meet the Fockers, it was during this time that he made Permanent Midnight. So right as his comedic style was taking off, he's made what I understand to be a bit of a black comedy about heroin addiction. So I wonder how that is going to sit alongside the broader comedic appeal of his frat pack work, Perhaps it's better for me going in to expect a little comedy, because, to be honest, of his more serious work, I can't say anything struck me as particularly great. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is fine, but things like Reality Bites, Greenberg, Submarine haven't exactly bowled me over. Even recently I watched that sort of semi-family / Christmas film, The Nutcrackers, and that was a hodgepodge of comedy and drama. Well, let's not waste any more time talking about the potential that this film has. Let's see what late 90s Ben Stiller had to offer right as his name was about to become bigger than he'd ever imagined. Permanent Midnight. Let's do it.
I gotta get back to LA.
You're from LA?
I'm a writer.
I get it. You're like this Hemingway type who sold out to Hollywood.
Just in the middle of a show, for no reason whatsoever, boom, she pops out and she starts singing, okay? I don't know what she's doing, like an Ethel Merman. Oh, I love a parade.
So you came out cold?
Well, I had this friend Nicky, kind of a drug buddy from high school.
Where are my pills?
You keep them in this thing?
Yes, I made.
That's fine. They could have just gotten up and walked away.
If I was Perkin, where would I be?
Well now, let's keep things really Christmassy, shall we? Permanent Midnight, released 1998, directed by David Veloz and starring Ben Stiller, Liz Hurley, Owen Wilson, Maria Bello, and others. So this is based on the true story of Jerry Stahl, who was a heroin-addicted writer in LA, very popular in the 90s for shows which I didn't watch, like Alf and 30-somethings, but also for a show that I very much do watch and like, Twin Peaks. And Ben Stiller plays Jerry Stahl, and the film is entirely about his time in the 90s, putting up this facade, or not putting up a very good facade, of being a functioning Hollywood comedy writer, whilst also habitually abusing heroin on the regular. The film is pretty aimless in that it doesn't really have much of a plot going on. No real direction to it, but I guess that's supposed to be the point because it's replicating that drug-induced stupor and haze, that heroin brings. It doesn't actually improve your life. It just subdues and sedates everything and makes everything a blur and just about getting to the next fix rather than creating a pathway to navigate your life. It's about getting from this high to the next high as quickly and as smoothly and as painlessly as possible. The way the film is executed, I mean, look, this is 1998. It is it's fast talking. It thinks it's pretty slick, certainly in the early stages of the film. It thinks it's very slick. It's super 90s. So when I say it thinks it's pretty slick, what I mean by that is you've got music just racing over the soundtrack in between quick edits and scenes. Like the music makes what Ben Stiller's saying incomprehensible in the early parts, and we get this rogues gallery of actors popping up from Owen Wilson and Liz Hurley in these early stages, and it's all like, oh wow, look at this, Ben Stiller's here and he's wearing this big long black trench coat and sunglasses, and here's Owen Wilson and here's Liz Hurley, and now he's got to marry Liz Hurley so she can get a green card, and then when he marries Liz Hurley that means that he's going to get a writing job in Hollywood because she works for the studios, and I don't know, it's a weird feel to the whole thing, and there is an even weirder framing device for everything that happens, which is we see present day Ben Stiller 50 days clean from the habit. Ben Stiller is Jerry, 50 days clean from the habit. He's working at a fish finger restaurant from what I can understand, and this girl drives up in a car and sweet talks him and says, you want to come back to my hotel? And they end up going back to the hotel and fucking, and from what I can discern, the only thing they have in common is that they are both recovering heroin addicts, and how she even knew that he was, I don't know. But anyway, this is the framing device for the whole film. We keep cutting back to him and her at this motel while he just continues to tell her his fairly meandering and dull, and when I say dull, I mean as in there's not much more to it, story about how dependent he was on heroin and how absolutely hell-bent he was on self-destruction through heroin during his time as a writer in Hollywood. We see things like I say, how he married Liz Hurley for a green card, and then he started working on this really weird show called Mr. Chompers, which apparently is comparable to the show Alf. And I've never seen Alf, but I'm aware of it. It's that one with the alien-looking puppet, I think. And Mr. Chompers is based on this alien-looking puppet. And I think perhaps because of Jerry Stahl's addiction to heroin, he comes up with these sort of left-field suggestions for where certain episodes of the show could go, which the producers seemingly love. And then when he watches it back on television 10 days later, he can't believe it. He's like, I mean, I wrote that 10 days ago and now it's there. And he doesn't even really like his work, but he's sort of like amazed that it's happened. And half amazed that these producers took his batshit crazy idea, but they did. And I guess that's kind of saying something about, if not Hollywood, television writers, certainly in the 90s, who were just jonesing for the next weird fucking thing. And Stiller's heroin-induced stupor brought about these wild, batshit crazy ideas that they thought, hell, we've been doing this show, Alf, or Mr. Chompers, for years. Let's do something new. And this weird puppet gremlin thing works because it pops up at a funeral. The tone early on is weird to get used to. It has like baseline comedy. We're talking things like pants ripping when Ben Stiller bends over, some stoner stuff, him as an established Jew in the story having sex with an established kind of borderline Nazi woman who, while they're having sex, she's screaming, can't believe I'm fucking a Jew. It's like there's some stuff here which is a little bit crass and cringe and more in line with the more broad comedies we know Ben Stiller for. But we're getting it peppered in here in this weird, unwieldy, dramatic comedy stuff, that stuff that I just said gets mixed up with things like Ben Stiller's mum dying and him having to fly back to their house and mop up her blood. I don't really know why. It's just a bit crass and a bit shit, really, the way they merge it. But nevertheless, this habit that he has isn't going away anytime soon. And it seems alongside this habit, we're getting this satirical view of LA where everyone is obsessed with him and with the sweaty, manic personality he brings to certain interactions and parties. And Owen Wilson is this guy at parties who makes these pretentious things like, oh yeah, we're working on this show, which is a mixture of John Steinbeck and some other fucking pretentious name, you know, the connections at the party and all the sort of stuff they're working on while Ben Stiller's in another room shooting up and getting high the whole time. It's like basically whenever anything is happening in this film, whether it's writing for a new show or going in a new direction and his girlfriend getting, or slash wife, Liz Hurley, getting pregnant, it's always accompanied with the shot of Ben Stiller trying to sabotage it by just shooting up. But it's never really established whether he's trying to sabotage it. He's just so... That's his life. That's what he does. And whenever there is some comedy in the film, we keep falling back to these grotesque shots of Stiller shooting up and then shooting the blood that is in the syringe all over the ceiling of whatever room he happens to be shooting up in. Merry Christmas, like I said, perfect topic for the Christmas episode, isn't it? And I can't lie. When I found out that this was about Jerry Stahl and that Jerry Stahl had written for Twin Peaks, I was waiting for the obvious Twin Peaks parallel show to show up in this. You know, I was waiting for Ben Stiller's Jerry Stahl to start writing on the Twin Peaks equivalent show in the film. It never happens, unfortunately. It never happens. But he does work on other shows. He works for this sort of like a female lawyer thing, which I thought was maybe Ally McBeal, but then no, the timelines just don't sync up. And as part of this agreement, the woman working on the show is like, you've got to clean up. And Liz Hurley is also like, you've got to fucking clean up if you want to stay with me. So he goes to recovery, or attempts to. Well, not even recovery, it's like a methadone clinic is what I should say. But while there, he meets a guy called Gus who's all kinds of fucked up, and he gets Stiller hooked on even worse shit, and we get even wilder scenes of Stiller and this Gus in, like, for some reason in this really high-rise apartment, and they're both throwing themselves at these huge windows overlooking the city skyline, and it's quite terrifying because you think they're just going to crash straight through it, but they're so strung out on whatever it is they're strung out on, they don't care. They're just riding lightning at that point, and there's just more horrific shooting up scenes that go on. And I've got to be honest, the whole film sort of feels like a parody at times of the 90s aesthetic, but I don't know that it's doing it intentionally. I think it's doing it unintentionally and thus becomes a parody of itself. It's one that you can't really take seriously, but you can't full out laugh at because there's so much dark shit going alongside the admittedly limited comedic elements in the film. It is time capsule filmmaking, absolutely, because this film does not get made in the 21st century. Not like this, anyway. If it does, Paul Thomas Anderson's doing it, and he's doing it completely seriously. It does not exist in this format in the 21st century. I've got to say, there is a very strange connection between Ben Stiller and Maria Bello's character in the film. So Maria Bello is the woman who is at the motel, who we keep jump cutting back to them having sex and him regaling her with this story of his drug-addled life. And it doesn't really spoil too much to say. Towards the end, he professes his love for her, and we're meant to buy into this sort of forced romance / connection between them. But he doesn't know a fucking thing about her because, as is so typical in many, many films, particularly from this time period, he's the one who's been doing the talking the whole time about himself. And Maria Bello's just wasted listening to him regale her with his tale of drug addiction, to the point that he loves her because he's been able to just tell her everything about himself, the ego on him. She hasn't said more than a sentence about herself, really. But hey, that's 90s filmmaking, I guess.
He took me everything I had, but I got clean.
Yeah, I know, remember?
Why? Because you're what, 50 days clean? That's nothing. You're still a fucking junkie. That's why you have to go back to rehab and I have to go to work.
What are you afraid of?
I'm not afraid, Terry.
Bullshit. You're out here completely alone in the middle of fucking nowhere, working some weird-ass job. When is the last time you actually had fun? When's the last time you actually let yourself have a good time? Now. Here, right? This is it. Now, right? The last day. And it just freaks you the fuck out. You are totally afraid.
And you're so fucking intimate.
Fuck.
What?
I don't even know your name.
So let's switch to Stiller. Overall, it's not an enjoyable film. It's okay, it's interesting, but the film itself just doesn't have enough direction. It's not a sturdy film. It's not something that carries you along neatly. The blessed thing about it is that it's less than 90 minutes at least. And let's talk about Stiller. Now, he is a gangly, awkward refit of the Ben Stiller we know. He lost weight for the film, for one thing. He lost something like 30 pounds in order to play Jerry Stahl in the prime, if you want to call that, of his heroin addiction. But Stiller also has the pre-fame teeth. He's spindly. He's in this, like I said, this Matrix get-up with a black trench coat and shades to match. And he's got this attitude, particularly early on in the film, which doesn't feel easy to connect to. And like I said, there's a lot of quick talking early on in the film. That sort of peters out as the film gets to its conclusion. But up front, it's fast talking, smug, quoting people like so-and-so Toad would have said this and so-and-so Toad would have done that. I don't know who these people are, but it just struck me as very pretentious, LA pretentious rather than Frasier pretentious, if I could make that comparison. Essentially, he's just a fast-talking and unlikable character up front, but he is based on a real guy. And if I didn't mention it before, someone who wrote for Twin Peaks, of all things. So forget Crane connections. I need to keep making these Twin Peaks connections. But Stiller does settle into the role as it goes on, I guess, because he's one of these characters we're supposed to be obsessed with his life story because he is the man, he's telling the story, so we've got to be hanging on his every word just as she is. But I'm sat there thinking, well, who cares if he got so addicted to smack? Like, so what? What's the interesting angle in all of this? Is it that he was able to navigate LA while being strung out on drugs? Because that's not a new story. Even in the late 90s, I don't think that was a new story. It wasn't a new story in the 1940s, let alone the 90s. But I've got to say, one thing that's interesting about Stiller's performance is we're so used to him playing the comedic. And he is, I don't know, before doing this film, I sort of thought this would be slightly more dramatic. It is dramatic because of the subject matter, but he is still playing a variation of Ben Stiller, that comedic goofball. So in the early scenes of him shooting up heroin, it looked to me like a bad imitation of what a comedic portrayal of that would be like, and also a bit brutal. And as the film goes on and we get more and more shots of him shooting up, it gets a little more visceral and a little more brutal. I absolutely can't stand the shots of him squirting the blood-filled syringes over the ceilings of whatever room he's in. It's horrendous viewing, but it's very effective because of it. But we also get things like him taping up his arm with the plug cord for a radio before shooting up, just because that's all he has available to him. He grows into the junkie depiction as the film goes on. Particularly, there's a scene where he gets beaten up and he has to placate Liz Hurley's character so he can get his hands on the last remaining bit of heroin in the house, on the promise that he'll go to rehab in the morning. He says a very interesting line, which is, "This is just the gas I need to get me to the hospital." It's interesting, and it was at this point where I sort of switched, and I was like, I buy you now, Ben Stiller. I buy you in this role now. I can kind of see it. And there is this thing of him evolving from the parody black trench coat level of heroin addict through to the green jacket, garish print button shirt level of junkie, if that makes sense. Like, visually he does that, but it's at this point I buy into what he's doing because it feels like he's evolving, and the manic energy of him when he's on heroin kind of works with the Ben Stiller performance, because the harmony and beats we're all so familiar with in Stiller's comedy, somehow it makes sense for that to be the way he is when he's strung out, because he's so erratic and his demeanor is ridiculous because of his intoxicated state, and not because he's trying to deliver a comedic performance. And towards the end, you've got to navigate this very difficult subject matter, which is he has a kid. We flash back to when he had a kid, a baby, in the car with him, and he had his shirt off, he was sweating, and he was shooting up in the car with his baby. Not only was he shooting up, he's shooting up in his neck, and my God, that scene is hard to watch. And he calls himself Slime early on in the film, and I caught myself thinking at this point in the film, man, you are Slime. And that That's effective. Stiller did it well, because by that point in the film, I am viewing him as slime. I'm not thinking of him as Gaylord Fokker. I'm thinking of him as the slime that he is at that point. The framing device, although I don't like it at the motel, but the framing device that he's 50 days clean makes this hard shit that you're seeing here somewhat more palatable to stomach, because you know that there is reprieve. You know that he's on the right track in present day. But Stiller shooting up in the neck is some unreal levels of dramatic acting from that guy that I've definitely never seen him do before. And I've got to give him props for that, if not the film overall.
Hey, I'm sorry about it in there. I just, I think I got nervous and...
Bullshit. I bet $50 I'd find track marks between your toes.
Look, I said I was sorry, so...
Don't be sorry. It's a shitty show. But they're paying me an obscene amount of money, which I need because everything I made when I was young, I either drank away, snorted up my nose, or drove in the pool.
Well, congratulations.
So then, let's just have a few bits of trivia on Permanent Midnight. Apparently, David Duchovny was originally cast as Jerry Stahl, but he left the project and Ben Stiller swooped in. And in order to perfect the role of a heroin addict, Stiller worked very closely with Stahl himself and learned about heroin use. And as I mentioned, he lost 30 pounds. And apparently he did all of that through a liquid diet. I already mentioned it, but the fictional television show Mr. Chompers was based on Jerry Stahl's experience writing for Alf. Ben Stiller's mother and Mira co-starred on Alf, on which that fictional show was based. And apparently Ben Stiller and Jerry Stahl are still good friends to this day, and Jerry was even Ben's best man when he married Christine Taylor. And it does seem, obviously because of the connection with Jerry Stahl, that Stiller would naturally be proud of Permanent Midnight, and I'm sure his performance in it as well. I have seen a quote where he said he's always liked that little movie, he called it a little movie, Permanent Midnight, that I did back in 97, 98 about Jerry Stahl, the comedy writer. It's a true story. Well, we know that, Ben. You're just stating facts there, but I'm going to take it that you are proud of it, but it doesn't quite fit in with what you would go on to do. So you might be proud of it, but you might just keep it quietly on the side as opposed to pushing it front and center.
I just really feel the need to make a connection.
Well, Niles, I think you've made a connection. It just seems a little bit extreme, though,
And so I guess that means it is time for our Crane connection, the point in the episode where we try and link everything back to the episode of Frasier we watched, specifically where we try to link Ben Stiller's Barry the Crier, who can't stop crying on Christmas Day, with Ben Stiller's Jerry, who can't stop shooting up every day. Well, I'll tell you what, there it is. It is someone who cannot stop doing something. Barry, whatever it was that was going on in his life, we never hear what it was. He's just sad all the time, crying all the time. It's played for laughs in the episode, but this is a man who's depressed. Genuinely depressed. Very sad on Christmas Day. And we don't know what's happened to cause that. Similarly here, with Jerry Stahl, we don't ever really find out the root cause of why he is addicted to heroin. We get hints at things not being great in his home life when he was a kid. Certainly when his mother calls up before she dies, there's a hint there that her calling him up prompts him and makes him seek out more drugs beyond the heroin. So there's something in his past that we don't quite know, which is causing him this pain, this anguish, which he can only release through shooting up, in the same way that Barry could only release through blubbing and sobbing. So on that very, very cheery note, may I remind you again that this was a Christmas episode, folks, and that is how you make one hell of a dark Crane connection. If we want to keep things really sweet and light and end on a high note, here's another Crane connection for you. We already had Ben Stiller working with John Mahoney at the beginning. Well, check this out. Right at the end of the film, Liz Hurley is now living with another guy, not Ben Stiller, and we see him for about 30 seconds. Guess who he is? He's Robert, the French convenience store worker that Martin will upset seasons and seasons of Frasier down the line.
Robert! No one calls me Robert! Robert! Not now!
Robert, who I love. He's in this with an American accent, which was it set me back. I was rocking on my feet. He's in it for like 30 seconds. So that's another Crane connection. And well, I guess that sadly brings us to the end of today's episode. So then, let us say goodbye to Christmas, even though we're approaching spring. Let us say goodbye to Barry, who we can only hope has found peace and solace somewhere, and that the tears have stopped flowing. Goodbye to Ben Stiller and his many, many comedic performances over the years, but not goodbye to his showrunner persuasions of later years. And goodbye to Jerry Stahl, a man who I can truly only hope is out there somewhere keeping his nose clean and flying right. As always, thanks to all of you for listening, for liking, subscribing, sharing. I really appreciate our little interactions online, so keep it up. Just throw me a like, throw me a comment, send me a suggestion, whatever you want. I love you all. You can connect with me on all the usual socials. You know where I'm at by now. And if you want to, you can leave me a 5-star review. And if you want to, you can leave me a 1-star review, because that would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Maybe don't do that. Next week's episode, Frasier puts his foot in it after finding his father has had a lady friend sleep over in Guess Who's Coming to Breakfast. We'll be locking in and focusing on Golden Boy himself, Elijah Wood, for this episode. But we won't be joining him on the march to Mordor. We'll be talking about his leading performance in Liev Schreiber's 2005 film, Everything is Illuminated. And if I'm lucky, I might just have my own Samwise Gamgee to make the journey with me. Good night.